he now joins us via Zoom. Professor, good evening and welcome to the show.
Good evening, good evening, good evening, listeners.
Professor, to start with, talk to us about what your views are in terms of the significance of Africa Day and how it's evolved over time. And perhaps you could, just touch on how Africa's history and culture influenced the continent's development.
Thank you. Just let's start from the beginning. Africa Day today marks the 60th anniversary of the OAU. So it's a day for celebration. OAU was born, as the president mentioned, in Ethiopia, having been organized and convened by Ghana's President Kwame Nkrumah. And he had the support of Imperial Majesty Selassie. And moving back, Ghana became the star because it was one of the first countries in Africa to get liberation in '57. So it had legitimacy in promoting this, and Ghana's intention was for Africa-wide liberation. So this was the essential thing, and at that meeting in Addis Ababa, with the summit, there are about 32 member states represented at the highest level. They took what was there as African Freedom Day, and they put it in a little more direction by resolution to make it Africa Liberation Day. And subsequently, many years later, in 2001, they transformed it to Africa Day. I have written and I've felt strongly that Africa Day is a very nice mantra, but unlike the predecessor, African Liberation Day, that had a message to Africans all over the world, that we were in a struggle for liberation, and that is not a single event.
I just want to interject there, Professor. You mentioned that you wrote on Africa Day, and I'd also want to ask you about, an article that you titled "Africa Day is Meaningless," and perhaps just briefly touch on the factors that got you to that conclusion.
Okay. Africa Day, and I've been working on that for many years now, but it has touched me a bit when I look at where we are in relationship to our objectives for 2063. And when I looked and I saw only 5 countries in Africa having GDP per capita above 10,000, and another 5 or 6 with GDP above 5,000, then it dawned on me that something is wrong. And Africa Day does not address the problems that we have to face. And I felt that Africa Day does not have the energy, it does not have the momentum, it does not have, it's not lively, it's no organism. Africa Liberation Day, on the other hand, was a call for every African to be part of the struggle towards freedom, liberation, getting rid of apartheid and the prejudices of colonization and so on. So Africa, so I did a quick poll of some young people, and I asked them, what does Africa Day mean to you? And everyone felt it was a public holiday, it was a national holiday, it was a holiday, it was a day of work, but they did not see the significance of Africa Day, because it didn't have the message that was intended to be carried. And so I decided to write this article to say that Africa Day is a nice mantra. It's not an objective. I don't know where it fits. And when I look at the theme, accelerating the implementation of the Africa Free Trade, Continental Free Trade Area, that does not touch the man on the street. There's no message for him, actually. He doesn't feel the connection. And so the polls came, and I said, something is wrong, because the build-up to Africa Day has been very, in fact, not much. You don't see anything. There's no momentum to our struggle for freedom and for liberation.
Many,
and so I wanted it's meaningless.
Just quickly, Professor, many people might disagree with you, pardon me, when it comes to the Africa Free Trade Area Agreement, and say that this is actually a wonderful tool to sort of bring Africa together. Then how can African countries then work together, in your opinion, to promote regional, and integration and economic growth?
Yes, but before I do that, Madam, it's in a sense of it's meaningless. Today, you see, liberation is a struggle not for the government or for the governments of Africa. It's a struggle for the people. Sovereignty is not with the government, national government or regional government. It's the people. The governments have the custody of sovereignty. And so when we make a decision like that, and the people are not part of that decision, or we have not done a campaign to inform them, to educate them, then they become disconnected. And so they are not part of the solution, so it seems. And so the concept of the free trade is a wonderful idea. In fact, it should have been Marcus Garvey wanted that to happen 100 years ago. But the instruments, the mechanism to get it has to be the people-driven. It has to be people-driven. And the connectivities are not there between the decisions and the deliveries. And that's why I say there's something missing in the middle, the connectivity to the people.
Very well, Professor. Just as we round off our discussion, what lessons, can we learn from Africa's history and experience, and how can these be applied, to other regions of the world? Because surely Africa has something to offer in terms of, teaching the rest of the world.
Well, I've done quite a bit of study now that I have a little more time, and Africa has nothing to apologize for. It is the richest country in the world. It has a history. They developed the first calculator in the world, long before mathematics came in. They had a calculator made on Chishango notches, and they had the multiplication, the division, the addition, and so on. And that was over in the period between 300 and 200 BC. So Africa, they had universities long before the rest of the world. Ghana, in fact, the first human being, the body was found in Ethiopia, in Omo, 193,000 years ago. Long before the history that we have been teaching our students and our people. And so we have been diseducating our people by information that is not substantiated. And so we have nothing. Africa is the mother of civilization. So there's nothing to be afraid of for Africa to take pride of its history and its development. They had castles, they had palaces larger than some of the ones we have today. They built Sudan, for example, that is in trouble now. They have more pyramids than Ethiopia, more pyramids than Egypt.
Thank you, Professor.
They developed the technology to build buildings 40 meters high.
Thank you so much.
And so Africa does not apologize, but it has been, the people have been disinformed. They have been misled by a lot of literature that is not based on African story and African reality and African facts.
I think we can go on and talk about the greatness of Africa, but we'll end on that note. And I take with me your quote just now saying that Africa is the mother of civilization. Thank you so much, Professor Earle.